Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present part of my work as a policymaker evaluator in different countries. It is indeed an honor to be here and present what I found in Serbia, and it's a great opportunity to compare what's going on with other countries, including Chile, Israel, and Brazil. And essentially, what I want to provide as a message is that we need to pay attention to one specific aspect of legislation, which is age. That's the message. I'll bombard you with a lot of slides, but the message is age. Age matters. Okay? So essentially what we have currently is 108 countries have child restraint legislation and 83 do not. This is the distribution. We did this analysis in the past few years, in which we found that there's quite a bit of diversity in terms of how countries legislate in terms of age. So we have countries in the region of Latin America in which we have essentially demand children to be restrained under 4 or 5. And then in Europe we have legislation which is more strict, because it requires children to be perhaps close to 12 years old to be restrained in child restraints. But as the point here is, we have quite a bit of diversity. And here we have the case of Canada and the United States, and even in countries which have federal models, there is not a clear agreement. We have different ages. Here's what we have in terms of traffic accident child mortality rate by country, and as you could see, North America and Europe essentially have the best indicators. And then we see South America and parts of Africa in which they have the worst indicators. And that might be associated with the type of child restraint legislation, particularly in regards to age. So what's happening here? Essentially, when we did literature review, we found that indeed child restraint legislation can be effective in reducing either fatalities or injuries. And depending on the study, we will see that maybe up until 15% will be reduced in terms of reducing fatalities. However, when we look at more details, we found that Japan, in the case of Japan, is not clear. So essentially that brought up the question about, well, we know that in North America, essentially, and in Norway, we have found this particular type of policy to be effective. And it opens the question about what's going on in other countries. Countries that actually implemented child restraint legislation after 2004. So here we have the cases of Brazil, Chile, Serbia, and Israel. And when you look here, essentially what I want you to pay attention to is the difference in terms of age group. So in Brazil, children need to be restrained if they're lower than age. Okay, that's 8. In Chile is -4, in Israel is -9, and in Serbia is -3. Okay, this is child restraint. This is not seatbelt to make the clarification. So here's what the data we have. This is a time series analysis from these 4 countries, and it goes from different periods according to what the data available we had. So we collect information from official sources, and our analysis are from official sources. What we did specifically was to notice when the child restraint legislation was passed, and whether that particular type of legislation had an impact in reducing or not traffic fatalities or traffic injuries of those children who were traveling in vehicles. So essentially what we have here is the model, and what we're interested here is whether there's a change between what was happening before, what happened after, and whether that change, which is indicated in this lane, was sustained or not over time. Okay? So we model in this way, and we are going to show you what the results we had for the 4 countries. Here's the more formal way of expressing this formula. I'm willing to accept any questions after, but it's just for you to grasp the main message. Okay, so essentially what I'm going to be presenting is whether or not it was effective, immediate or not, which is the B2, and to what extent the effect of this particular legislation was sustained or not. That's the B3. And we control for several factors in order to see whether this particular type of variation that we found was associated or not to this legislation. So here are the data from Brazil, Chile, Israel, and Serbia. Side note, I think yesterday I met one of the creators of the data set of Serbia, and you guys have a wonderful data set. Wonderful. And I work in Canada, and we don't have this particular type of data set that actually allows you to see very good details of the quality or the characteristics or the hour, etc., that allow you to actually come up with a analysis associated, for instance, with time series. So the side note is really good what you have, and you should promote it actually. So here we have essentially, in the case of Brazil, if you see Brazil is going up, and then it goes slowly down. The case of Chile here is more volatile, and we don't really observe much. But if you compare to the black one, it slowly also is going down. In the case of Israel, it's more clear. You observe that the downtrend is going over time compared to the rest. And in case of Serbia, you observe that it's actually going up in the period before of the enactment, and then it drops, but then it seems like it's being stable. But we're going to test this. We're going to see whether what we're observing right here is associated or not with the enactment of each legislation. So what is what we obtain when we run the models? So in the case of Chile and Serbia, we actually observe an immediate impact of the law. So there was some decreasing right after the enactment of law was done in both in Chile and Serbia, which was not the case in Brazil or Israel. And then when we see whether this particular type of policy is sustained over time, only Brazil and Chile present positive results. I'm sorry, Brazil and Israel. That means over time, children who were traveling this particular type of vehicles started to decreasing in terms of fatalities and injuries. And that was not observed in Chile, and that was not observed in Serbia, indicating that there's something going on. So when we did the how many lives were saved after the enactment of this, or injuries after this legislation, we actually observed that in both in Chile and in Serbia, there was in the first year of enactment, we can say that it was about 9 and 7 lives which were saved in the first year of enactment. But one should expect that this number increases over time, and actually we didn't observe that after. Then in Chile, up until December 2014, there was 69 injuries saved, but when we look at the confidence interval, the zero is in between, so we're not certain. And the same goes with Serbia. So we have a mix of positive and negative news here. So, to sum up, so we have an immediate impact in Chile and Serbia, and we have a sustained impact in Brazil and Israel, and that calls for a question: what's the difference? And you have some already in the conference some information that allows you to identify one of the factors of why this might be. So, for instance, we know that both in Chile and Serbia, the child restraint use is not as high as one would expect. Secondly, maybe some educational programs are not teaching adults what is needed to install this particular type of devices within the cars. And in a conversation we had yesterday with Eduardo also mentioned something which is relevant. Also, maybe buyers might be training this particular type of policy to actually indicate to potential adults that are going to buy these devices that how these devices should be installed properly. Then also we suspect that law enforcement can be explaining this. And lastly, when we compare to Israel particularly, the involvement of health professionals at the beginning of the life of a person when is born is absolutely different. So for instance, a person that is born in Israel needs to be right away, in order to be out of the hospital, the nurse needs to verify that there is a child restraint in the vehicle. So it starts from zero. So from there, we have a series of policies that can enlighten or improve this situation. So what is the limitations of this study? So we didn't include whether vehicle occupants have different ages. We don't know if parents who were exposed to this particular type of accidents or crashes were younger than others. That might be something to inspect more properly. And also, we were not certain about whether this could have been associated with crises that might have happened in different countries. A crisis, when I'm saying economic crisis, that might have an impact in the numbers of hours that people actually drive. And thank you so much.